Okay, I think we'll start and then we see people continue logging on. So hi everyone, thank you for joining today's session. So I'm Johanna Bruto-Klein. I'm a researcher on climate and environment at Groupe URD, which is a French think tank specialized in crisis settings. And I'm also the coordinator of the REH, Réseau Environnement Humanitaire, which is hosting today's session. And I'm going to let my colleagues from the working group introduce themselves. And then we can go into more of an introduction of what we're going to talk about today. So I'm going to pass it on to Camille, because your mic is open.
Hi, everyone. So I'm Camille Théron. I work at Humanity and Inclusion, and I'm responsible there for the environmental policy implementation globally. And under that capacity, I'm also like a part of the piloting committee of the REH and a member of the environmental assessment working group. So passing it to Julie.
Hi everyone, I am Julie Mayence. I work for Solidarity International as the head of the Food Security and Livelihood Unit. I'm also a focal point for environment and climate issues within the FSL sector within Solidarity International. And I'm here also because I am a member of the Environmental Assessment Working Group. So I pass the floor to Laurie.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, so Laurie here. I work for the Netherlands Red Cross in the head office in Amsterdam. And I am the focal point on Green Response, which is a movement vocabulary, but it stands for more environmental sustainability. So yeah, and I'm here today as a member of this working group on environmental screening.
Thank you, Laurie. Thank you, Cam. Thank you, Julie. So I see some familiar names. So the introduction might be a little bit boring for you guys, but for other people. So we are here. The session is hosted by the Environmental Assessment Working Group, which is part of the REH. The REH is the Réseau Environnement Humanitaire, or Humanitarian Environmental Network. It's a network of Francophone humanitarian and development workers who work together to reduce the environmental footprint of aid. It has existed since 2012, and we have the OG creator here today in the room, Samantha, and it formalized in 2021. We have now over 250 members, including 30 organizations, and there's a lot of things going around in the network, but we have specifically 4 working groups to operationalize what the network does. So we have one working group on waste management, which is holding a similar session on Thursday afternoon. We have one on sustainable procurement, which is holding their session on Thursday morning. One on carbon, which held its session this morning, and then the environmental assessment working group. So this working group has been around since 2021. The aim of the Environmental Assessments Working Group is to help members and the rest of the sector to use environmental screening tools. And we'll see, I think most of you know a lot of different tools, but initially we focused on the NEED Plus, which we're going to explain right after. But then we also explored other tools such as the CEDRIC and the Environmental Stewardship tool. Because we aim to help members and the rest of the sector, we've done tutorial videos, which you actually can click on the link right now, but I'll put it in the chat right after. And those are available both in French and in English. And we've also provided feedback with regards to the NEED Plus tool, both in 2022 and 2023. The working group has also been a part of the NEED Plus steering committee since it was launched last year. And at the bottom of the slide, you have the different organizations that are a member of this working group. And before we continue, we thought it could be interesting to know who's in the room. So we just have a quick Slido. I think I know most of you, but some of you I don't know. So you can either use your phone and look at the QR code or go on slido.com and say where you're joining us from. Personally, I'm in Paris, France, even though my organization is based in the south of France. And I think my colleagues are scattered a little bit everywhere, except Julie, which is in Paris as well. Oh, well, yeah, and if you're in Geneva, you're in luck then. You can go to the HNPW in person then. But people from Canada, cool. Thank you. Well, yeah, we have a lot of French, but also new places, so thank you. Similarly, we'd be interested in knowing what kind of organization you work for. So as I was saying personally, and that's also why the option is there, I work for a think tank. I think most people work for an NGO and I think other is more support organizations, as they say, or joint initiatives, for example. And it's very good if we have a majority of people working in NGOs because what we're going to present later on is aimed specifically at you. Thank you. And the people who are joining in, we're just doing a quick Slido to know who's in the room. You can join by scanning the QR code on the left or going on slide.com. Then we'd be interested to know, if we're going more into the subject, if you've ever heard of different environmental screening tools, if so, which one they are, and if you use them. So we've put a quite comprehensive list of the different tools that are out there. If there's anyone that speaks to you. Okay, it looks like NEAT Plus is definitely the most famous one. And just so you know, today's session, we're going to talk about the NEAT Plus, the CDRIG, and the environmental stewardship tool that's at the bottom of the slide. If you're interested in the other tools, you can find them online as well. And that's also something that we might want to look at later on. But right now, we have not, at this point in time, we have not looked at those tools extensively. So, as we were not really surprised that NEAT Plus was going to be the most famous one, we started with presenting basically what the NEAT Plus is and our feedback on the tool. So as you might know, the NEAT Plus is a project level environmental screening tool. And there are two versions of the tool. There's a rule version that's available on Excel and Kobo, which is probably the version that you know. And then there's an urban version that is on an online platform. The initial draft of the NEAT Plus, the rule version, was specifically designed for a situation of displacement, but it has since then kind of been changed. And the way it works is that it combines environmental data with site-specific and activity-based questions to automatically analyze and flag priority environmental risks. It's actually quite useful because it allows the users and organizations to understand environmental sensitivities, mitigate the risks of their project, and to find opportunities for greener humanitarian operations. The way it works is you can see it on the right here. Firstly, you choose which version of the tool you want to use, depending on your project and the activities that you might have. Then you complete what is called the sensitivity module, where you look at the activity, the area of the activity in which your project is going to take place. And then in the results, you have an environmental sensitivity summary, which highlights the bigger environmental risks you might face. And then once you have done this, which gives you a good overall of where your project stands, you look at the specific activities are included within your project. And there are different activity modules that exist, one for shelter, one for wash, and one for food security. And it also depends on the rural and the urban. They're not exactly the same questions and the same mitigation results. And so at the end, you have the environmental sensitivity summary and also activity impact, and it proposes mitigation measures to reduce that risk. The rural NEAT Plus is available in English, Spanish, and French, and urban is only available in English for now. If you have any questions at any point, also the people joining in, you can present yourself in the chat or put any questions in the chat. There's no problem. So with regards to the NEED Plus rule, this is feedback from the working group. So the way we've done it is that we've gathered for twice 2 days, and looked at the tool in extent, what the questions were, what the results are, and then we're able to provide the feedback. And as I said, I'm going to put the links to our reports in the chat. Overall, we think that the rule version of the NEED Plus is quite useful and it is an easy tool. It is especially useful for awareness raising because you don't need any prior environmental knowledge. So we think it's doing a really good job in this sense. And at the end, it produces a very useful risk matrix. So I put a screenshot here on the right. You can see that you have the key environmental concerns for the activities within your project, as well as the risk matrix, and then underneath it you have your mitigation tips. So that is quite useful to then look at how to integrate it into your project and to reduce the environmental impact of your project. But with regards to rule, we think that the tool is incomplete. Some sectors are missing, and notably the health module and some sub-modules as well. And overall, because it was developed quite a long time ago, we think that the questions and mitigation measures need to be revised in full. That's also feedback that we've provided within the through the steering committee. And then with regards to the urban version of the tool, so that's the online version of the NEED Plus, we think that the fact that it's online and it's on a very nice platform is quite good, is very user-friendly, and you could potentially see other people's results. So let's say I'm doing a project in X area and Julie has done a project in the same area, then I can compare the environmental sensitivities and see if it's we find the same results, if there's some things that might be missing. And also it might be the case then you can just potentially take Julie's and then look and go a little bit faster. But right now, the version as it is has big technical bugs. We think that it's in the algorithm, the way it's done. In the results, there's some mismatches between the different sectors and the different mitigation tips that are suggested. And overall, it's still quite lengthy and heavy with a complicated final report. So the report is now available in the long version and a shorter version. But the urban version does not provide a risk matrix as the rule does, which we think is quite useful actually to integrate, to look at which mitigation measures to choose and look at which environmental risks we should focus on. And so because of its length for the full report and also for the short report, we think that users might get frustrated. And so overall, the working group think that for the urban version of the tool is not functional right now because of the technical bugs that you might have. And that, again, some sectors are missing and that it needs to be reviewed for length and relevance. I do have to note that they're not the same questions as in the rule version. For example, the FSL section is way more detailed in the urban version. So that's really good. So there's different advantages and different advantages to both versions. And now I'm going to pass it on to Camille to talk a little bit about the CDRIC tool.
Thanks. So as Joanna was mentioning, so for the NEED Plus, when the way that we worked was we all gathered for 2 days, and then all of our organizations, maybe not all, but like most of our organization had already used the NEED Plus, were using it, and we were able to gather information from within the group to do this assessment. For CDRIG, it was a bit different because that came a bit later. So we did that, the assessment last year. And at that time, it was a deliberate effort to go and look at other environmental assessment tools beyond the NEED Plus and be able to see, and compare advantages and pros and cons, basically, of those different tools. And so none of us had, well, actually, I think one organization had used the CDRIG before, but none of the others. And so we actually got a trainer to come and present the tool and explain how it was meant to be used. And then we tested the use of the tool with projects in group, so that we would be able to assess, whether like the benefits of using it versus the NEET Plus, or what was better or worse, in our personal opinions, of course. And so basically, what came out is like, first, there are different CEDRIGs. So I won't go into the detail because that might be a bit too much. But you have the light CEDRIG tool, which allows you to do sort of first screening in a small team, and get early results. But the in-depth assessment and in-depth really requires you to use the strategic or operational CEDRIG. And for those ones, so it's a bit more involved than the NEET Plus. So the NEET Plus was sort of promising that it would be easy to use and could be handled by someone who's not an environmental specialist. If you want to do the strategic or operational CEDRIG, then you have to get a team of people to work on it. It takes several days to do it properly. And then it's meant to be able to include stakeholders, which is a benefit in a way, because the more people or the more stakeholders you involve in an environmental assessment, then the more risks and you will be able to identify and then assess and potentially mitigate. So that's a benefit, but of course it takes a lot more work. And the one of the criticism, I guess, that we had for the tool was that the way it's built is very open. Like the NEET Plus basically works as a set of, it's a questionnaire, and you have a set of questions depending on what activities you've selected, and then you have drop-down lists of answers that you can answer to those questions. So it's a closed survey, and you just need to select the best answer to each question. Whereas the CEDRIG is completely open, so you basically have to sit together and then identify what questions you want to ask, and then how you're going to answer them, and what mitigation solutions you're going to identify to work on the issues that you've assessed. And so because it's more open, it allows you to, and because you're supposed to work on it with multiple stakeholders, it's probably much more comprehensive if you do it properly, and allows you to go more into the specific context that you're assessing and the details of your projects. But because of the open nature and the sort of emptiness of the tool at the beginning, you really need to have a facilitator for the process that has the technical knowledge and that is an environmental specialist. And so for us, that was one of the issues that we had with the tool, is that it can be useful, but it needs that person with the right capabilities to drive the process. And most of us in our organization, we tend to not have those people available at field level, and definitely not in sufficient numbers to be able to handle. If we wanted to use it for all of our projects, then we don't have enough environmental specialists to be able to drive those processes in each country for each project. And so we found it very hard impossible to recommend within our organizations and hard to implement because of that resource constraint. I think that was most of the assessment. I don't know if I forgot anything, Joanna.
No, I think you're good. Thank you. And if you have any questions at any time, don't hesitate to put it in the chat. Just one point it's currently being revised. Yeah. So take everything we said with a grain of salt, basically, because it is being revised, and we have provided that feedback to the people working on the seed reg.
But also, like, I think the revision, like I guess the philosophy behind the seed rig was to have that openness and that ability to self-declare and self-identify risks. And then, so it's more helping you along that risk assessment process than feeding you the answers. And so I don't think that will change because that, like, the creator of the tool seemed quite attached to that, that process and the openness of the process, which, as I said, if you have the right team and the right amount of time to work on it, is probably very good. But sadly, it's not the constraints context within which we are working.
Thank you, Camille. So this is the last tool that we're going to go and present before going onwards. So this is the environmental stewardship tool. So this is a tool that was developed by Caritas and Catholic Relief Services. So this is a project level environmental screening tool. It works in 3 different steps, basically. Firstly, it asks questions on your project and its impact on the environment around. And then it takes this analysis and ranks the different environmental risks that you might be faced with. And then you have to choose which risks are most relevant according to you. And then at the end, you have a different, sorry, I just realized I put the French screenshot, but this is available in English, Spanish, and French. And then at the end, you have, once you've done your analysis, you can go to the different tabs and see mitigation measures, suggestions for different sectorial activities. So it's actually quite easy to use. It's a simple Excel, and you have everything that you need in the same place. So overall, we think that the environmental stewardship tool is very useful, especially because the way it is developed, and it's also really user-friendly. It's not complicated. Everybody can use it, and it's also quick to do a quick screening at project level. The one thing that we have to say about the tool is that it is incomplete in the sense that it's missing some sectors and that there might be some guidance on the last step. So they tend to be quite general, or they were a little bit old. This is before it has been revised. So a new version just came out. So I'm going to put the link. Everybody was revising their tools at the same time. So that's also why it was quite useful when we tested out the tools and we're able to provide the feedback. So we think that it hasn't reached its full potential yet. And I'm going to let Julie go on to the last part, because it's really about, we think it does a really good job at the first step of analyzing the risks, on the second step of selecting which risks are most relevant to your project and to suggest mitigation measures, but not really on integrating them and helping you choose which mitigation measures basically to apply to your project. So overall, it's very good and it's quick to use, but we don't think it has reached its full potential as of yet. So after we've looked at those different tools, the working group has come to the realization that no tool is 100% fit to our needs as of yet, but a lot of them are on process of being revised or are being worked on. Especially DIN Plus is gonna be worked on and developed further. But as of yet, globally, we think that the Rule Need Plus, it's easy, it's fast, and it's simple to complete, and that it really does the job in the sense that there's no environmental knowledge required to use it. And the final report has an easy risk and matrix to use, but the final report is very lengthy, and so it's the last step of integrating mitigation measures is quite hard to do at a project level, and some sectors are missing and questions need to be revised. For the urban NEET Plus, as I was saying, we think it's more user-friendly, and some sections are more, to us, have more detail and then in some way better than in the rule version, for example, for the FSL sector. But because of the big technical glitch that is there right now, which we think might be able to be fixed, we cannot recommend the tool as of yet. With regards to the CEDARIC tool, as we said, we think it would be good for country office-wide environmental strategy, but not really for project level, and it really lacks guidance for the risk analysis. You do need somebody that has environmental expertise, as was saying Camille, that kind of guide through the risk analysis and the selection of mitigation measures. And then finally, the environmental stewardship tool, we think it's very user-friendly and useful, but the last part might be incomplete, as well as some sectors might be missing. And with that, I'm going to pass it on to my colleague Julie to go a little bit further into our analysis.
Thanks, Joanna. Maybe before we continue with this section, any questions you might have on the existing tools review? Because now I will introduce you with a matrix we have been developing in the last months. But before going in that section, maybe some questions on this review we have been doing on the different tools. You can write in the chat, or you can just open your mic, as you prefer. Nope. Okay, we can then continue. Okay, let you see the chat. I see. Okay, it's you, Joanna. You put in the chat. All right. So after this review of all the existing tools, as Joanna mentioned, we were not fully satisfied with those tools. And as we have been also getting a lot of learning from the different tools, we had this idea within the working group to develop a matrix that will kind of gather all this learning we have been doing through the revision of all those tools, and a matrix that could be easily used by field teams to analyze the potential environmental risks of their projects. So we have called it for now the Multisectorial Environmental Risk Analysis Matrix, which is a very long name. MERA matrix, still also under a process of finding a catchy name. But what is important first to say is that it is not a new tool. It is not like going to compete to all the different tools we have been presenting right now. It's a matrix that is gathering, as I mentioned, all valuable inputs from all those different tools. And also, it's a matrix that gathers, wow, nice beach, a nice picture of beach. So it's a tool that's a matrix that gathers all also experiences we have around the working group, and even around a wider range of people, as you will see. This matrix is here to guide the field discussion, because we also, from our own experience of environmental assessment in the field, what is the most important is the field discussion on the risks and the mitigation measures. So we try to think of something simple and easy to use for field teams to guide those discussions that are done at field level. And that have to be so discussion that will be of course specific to the context and project activities. So here you see a screenshot of the food security and livelihood section of the multisectoral risk analysis matrix. And I will be showing a more detailed screenshot afterwards. Next slide, please. And I see one comment that asked for the link to the matrix, so we can share the one, the draft one. So this matrix, as I mentioned, we aim it to be practical and sector specific. And so we have different, so it's an Excel document with different Excel sheets for sector. We have developed right now. We have quite well advanced for the food security and livelihood sector, for the WASH sector, and for the shelter and settlement sector. And we are starting with health and MHPSS. I'm always confusing with this one. Mental health and psychosocial supports. Myself, I was in the FSL task force. So I will be speaking about that one, but just to say that it's a very simple matrix, and we have divided, we'll see just afterwards, but we have divided by sector, and then for each sector by subsector, and for each subsector by activities. And then for each activities, you have a list of potential environmental risks, and for each environmental risk, potential mitigation measure. But then, as I mentioned, this matrix is then used through, for example, a workshop organized with field teams that will decide, based on their context specificities and their project activities they plan to implement, what finally are the main risks and the mitigation measures that are more suitable to their context. And also the discussion will be done on how to operationalize those mitigation measures, which is a very important step for us, and which is a step that is sometimes the most difficult to do. So we can maybe switch to the next slide, where I show you an extract of the, maybe not the next one. Yeah. So as you see, this is just an example of an extract from the FSL matrix, and just for the subsector on food assistance, and just for one activity among this subsector, in-kind food distribution. So as you can see, and so the matrix is quite bigger than that, of course. Just to introduce you with the FSL matrix, we have as subsector, we have food assistance, we have crops, farming support, we have livestock, we have fisheries and aquaculture, and then we have business development. So all the different subsectors of the FSL sector. And then we have quite a lot of activities within those different subsectors. So what we have done is that we have revised all the different environmental risks. Yeah, if you can come back. Yeah, before. Sorry, Joanna. As you can see, how is it built? So for each activity, we have a list of the main potential environmental risks, and for each risk, the main mitigation measures that can be applied. And so, yeah, next slide, how we have built this matrix. So yeah, you can put all the 3 points, please, Joanna, thank you. So what we have done is that within our working group, we split it in the different sectors. And then we have revised the content related to our own sector. For example, for FSL, I've been looking at the NEET Plus, the CEDRIC, the EST sections related to food security and livelihoods. So trying to gather all the most relevant information from those tools. We have also been looking at the ECO guidelines that are providing a lot of information for each sector, each humanitarian sector of intervention on environmental risks and mitigation measures. So we have gathered all this information, and we have, of course, selected the most relevant information for us in this matrix. Then the second step was to create a wider task force with more experts than the one within our, let's say, small working group. So, for example, for the FSL sector, we've been reaching the food security global cluster network. So we've been inviting the members of the food security cluster to join this task force to review the draft matrix. So We were 7 organizations within this task force for FSL, reviewing the draft matrix. And then the third step we've been doing is that we organized mid-April a workshop where we were very happy to receive quite a lot of participants. We had around 90 participants that revised all together the matrix. So we divided in different discussion groups depending on the expertise. For example, a group on food assistance, another one on livestock. So we've been really trying to have a collaborative process to build this matrix in order to really get all the knowledge and expertise of a wide range of experts in the sector, and also to have their buy-in for this matrix, because the idea is really to have this matrix disseminated among all organizations doing humanitarian interventions and wanting to assess the environmental impact ahead of the planning and the designing of their projects. So you can see there is a link to the FSL Matrix workshop if you want to see the recording of this workshop and access to the matrix and the slides. Next, please. Yes, so just at the end of this workshop on the FSL Matrix, we've been gathering some feedback from the participants. As I mentioned, around 90 participants. And it seems that what they liked from the tool is that it's easy to use. So we are happy because it was one of our objectives. And then a very important thing, if we want this matrix to be used, we have to find a dissemination strategy. So most of the participants mentioned the clusters, and that's what we started to do by first involving clusters members within the different task force. Just I did not mention the others because I'm on the FSL one. But for example, the WASH task force that is building the WASH matrix has been reaching the climate working group of the global WASH cluster. So they will be working on this draft matrix for the WASH sector. And at the end, we will be, so we are really at the steps of finalizing this matrix. We hopefully want to finalize it around June, July. And yes, let's keep in touch for the dissemination. We'll probably organize a webinar to disseminate the final multi-sectorial matrix. And yeah, we really hope it will be useful. And yes, I think that we can open the floor for questions, Joanna.
Yeah. No, thank you. Thank you so much, Julie and Camille. Just a few notes. So as Julie was just saying, we're aiming to have our first version of the matrix for end of June, beginning July for FSL, WASH, and shelter. We're just starting the task force for MHPSS and health, so they might come more at the autumn, and then we're gonna try to have some so to disseminate really it throughout autumn, even though first version is already going to be available. And the way we wanted it to be used as well, it's in Excel, so everybody's going to be able to download it, and then you can change it, adapt it to your programs, to your own organization, because that is just an Excel file that's on your own laptop. So the idea is that we're going to try to make it evolve through feedback that we might be receiving, but then also each organization that might be using it can update it, change it. If there's any activity that's not relevant to them, just delete what's not relevant for them, and then add other things if they think it might be relevant to their activities. And yeah, you said that, Julie, for the WASH climate change cluster working group, same for shelter, because they already have a working group. We're going to go through them, so we might not have a workshop as we did for FSL, but in any case, if you're interested, you can, I'm going to put the link to the email that you can reach out to us, or any individually, one of us, we can put you in contact with the right people as well. Do you have any questions with regards to what we've shown with the analysis of the different tools or with the matrix on its own? You can either raise your hand or put it in the chat as you wish. Yeah, I can see a hand raised. Sorry, I can't see the full names. So whoever has hand 1, you can go ahead. Sorry, because I'm sharing my screen. I can see hands, but I don't know who's raising them.
Hi, yeah, that's me, hand 1.
Thank you.
First of all, I'd like to thank you all for a great presentation, really, and for telling us about all the new tools that I've heard of Need Plus, but there are so many different tools out there. So thank you, first of all, for the excellent review and your feedback on it. My question might be a little bit past the assessment tool itself, but have you guys ever had experience with ensuring that the recommendation that comes out from the matrix and the matrices is actually implemented on field, maybe post-project, maybe feedback after the project has been completed? Because speaking from my country's experience, if it's private or public sector, NGOs, whatever it is, sometimes, and more recently, environmental screening has been added as a prerequisite for some projects, but sometimes it's just brushed away and just completed as a check mark and then is never revisited again. And seeing how important it is for the sustainability of projects and future contexts, how can we ensure that the mitigation measures are actually implemented? Thank you.
Thank you for that. Exactly. Great question, because that's exactly what we've seen. I'm going to let my colleagues answer if there's anything that they want to add, but I think that's very much the point of what we're seeing, especially right now, because more and more organizations are using environmental screening tools, also in link with the ECHO minimum environmental requirements, but we're not sure that there's any monitoring on this. I know ECHO is also trying to push to have at least 1 or 2 monitoring or a KPI basically on environmental mitigation measures so that you're able to do this monitoring in the long term. I don't think it's done very widely for now. One way we could see it, and I let my colleagues answer if there's anything else, but on the matrix itself, because you can then adapt it and change it as you wish. You can always then add a column and revisit whatever you've done. If you've chosen to do a mitigation measure, then look at set yourself criteria KPIs as is ECHO is suggesting. And I'm going to put the link as well as in case you might be aware, you're probably aware of the minimum environmental requirements, but they've also suggested new well, they're not voluntary indicators that you can already include. And so there's quite a comprehensive list also per sector. So I'm going to put the link there. And Julie, I'm going to let you answer.
Thank you. Maybe just to complete, looking at the matrix that we aim to develop that I presented, I did not mention the let's say the more operationalized section. I presented the core, the main section of the matrix, which is you pick the risk and the mitigation measure. But then what we want to develop also is a kind of guidance on how once you have selected the mitigation measures that are more relevant, how you operationalize them. So what are your the different means do you need in terms of human resources, experts, financial means, logistical means, etc. We even at first had this column for each mitigation measure on what are the needed means, but it was very difficult to complete because it's proper to each organization capacities, and also each context will have different needs. But what we want to do is to make sure that once you have selected the mitigation measures, you are thinking of how you can operationalize them. And for me, this is also part of this is also how you will monitor the implementation of those measures. So I think that we will need also to think on that monitoring part in this guidance that we want to add to this matrix. So thank you for the question. It's an important one. Over.
Thank you, Julie, and thank you, Farah, for your question. I think Fabiano is next. I can see my screen now.
Hi everyone, thanks a lot for this session today. I've been following up a little bit on the food security one, and eager to join the other ones as well. Just to add my 2 cents to this very interesting question and discussion, because sometimes we struggle a lot with perfecting a tool and all that. And I mean, it's necessary, right? We all are seeing not only through the assessment you guys developed that is really comprehensive, but also through our practice, trying to using these tools, that all of them are limited. And it's not likely that we're going to have a tool at a certain point that covers everything and address all the needs, right? I mean, it's basically impossible. So I guess what it's also needed, and it's a little bit what we are trying to do at DRC, is to build internal capacity as well. Normally, the tools are have been sold out as user-friendly, non-expert tools and all that. And in terms of applying the tool, is true. I mean, most of them are quite used to use, but the whole challenge comes after you apply the tool. It's exactly what to do with the results, right? And this is not a simple task. And it's not the task for a few days and one or two colleagues. If we really want to generate positive impacts through environmental screening, we need a more comprehensive investment and of energy on that, right? So this whole process of prioritizing the impacts we will try to address with our projects, contextualizing the mitigation measures, understanding what is feasible, what is under the scope of the project, coming back to the project to redesign solutions, incorporate new things. I guess this is the missing component, let's say. Not that the tools itself should address that, because it's quite complex, but I guess it's where organizations should invest on capacity building and stuff like that, because I guess this is what will help us to move from this risk of taking the tools and the environmental screening as just a bureaucracy, as Farah mentioned, to something that really help us to mitigate our impacts and invest on adaptation and all that. And in that sense, it's quite tricky when we have quite broad and generic mitigation measures recommended, right? Because the mitigation makes a lot of sense, but for a colleague that it's an expert on a very specific type of activity, how to put in place these, it's another conversation, right? So I guess we need to discuss a little bit also through the clusters, through experts we have on the sector and all that, what kind of research, what kind of support we can develop, and additional tools eventually to help on this second phase. That is, okay, if the recommendation is to calculate the carbon emissions of my activity, and this is all I have, it's one line saying that, what should I do, right? So then I guess we need kind of other pieces on this puzzle to make things happen in a more effective way. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Fabiana, for your question, comment, and also for following up with us following the FSL workshop. I think you're, again, exactly right. That's one of the limits, I think, that everybody, I mean, all the members have seen within their own organizations, is that the tool can only do so much. And then at some point, you really need the capacity building side of things. That's also why NRC is conducting those capacity building trainings all over the world, funded by ECHO. And I think that's one way also to do this. And that's, you're very right that the tools may be adapted to somebody without any environmental knowledge, but then to implement mitigation measures, it also requires some other skill sets. And so that's also why we think that the NEED Plus has value in awareness raising, because it asks you various questions that you might not be aware that those have a link with the environment, and that's maybe one process of building that capacity. But I think you're very right, and that there needs to be some resources that are put aside also for this internal capacity building. I don't know if there's anything that my colleagues from the working group want to add, because I'm always speaking under their own expertise. Yeah. So sorry, I don't know how satisfactory that response is, but I think we're very much aware that's one of the limits, and that a tool can only accomplish so much. And that's also why we want to support also what other organizations are doing with regards to capacity building, definitely. And there's a very good comment in the chat as well, that we have to be willing to commit financial and other resources to implementation of mitigation measures, and then to add on what was said before on the monitoring, because that's also how we can raise awareness. It's a long process, but I think at least there's some start on this. Paul, do you have a question?
Yes, I do. And it might have to do with my limited knowledge about all of the different types of tools on this whole, on this whole topic. So it's great that you assessed, let's say, all different existing tools, instead of looking in developing new tools, but looking at what's out there and how can it be used. But I do not understand exactly is the idea that you build a, let's say, a portfolio of different tools with different applications within your organization, and you pick and choose some of the tools that you developed, or sorry, that you assessed, or is the idea that in the end you can use one tool for different applications?
Sorry, my dog just barked and scared me. I didn't hear the last part. I'm so sorry.
No, so the question is whether the idea is that as an organization, let's say you build a set of different tools that you use for different applications, or in the end, is the idea that there's one tool that can be used for the different applications?
You know, I think Camilla?
Yeah, maybe just like the initial dream was to have one tool that is fit for all of the applications. Because even though those tools are user-friendly and easy to implement and on all of that, it still takes some trainings for our staff to get used to using them, and especially to analyzing the like what you get out of the tool, which is the most difficult part, as was said before. And so if we need to, like, we don't, some sectors we might have different staff for different activities, but then some of our staff will be working on different activities across the board, and they might move. So if we end up having 5 different tools for different applications, that you might have to train your staff in how to use those 5 different tools, and that will be a whole additional headache for our organization. So ideally, we would love to have, I think, a single tool for all applications. What we found so far, like, I don't think, Andrew Lee, maybe you can correct me, but when we identified the missing elements in all of the in those tools, like especially, for example, the NEED Plus and the EST, which were the most immediately usable ones, the missing parts are often overlapping. Like, I think everybody started with the obvious sectors of intervention. It's very easy to find recommendation for WASH. It's fairly easy to find it for FSL. It's harder for health. And so, at the end, it's not like we have, like, the assessment that we did not provide, it's not like there were different pieces and together they made a whole puzzle. And so that's also why I think now the team is working on having those matrix where we at least pull together in one space all the information that was spread across all of those different tools. and we're lobbying, the NEET Plus and the EST team to try and have them build up, like add sectors, especially to their tools. Julie.
Yeah, thanks. Maybe just on the last point you mentioned, and maybe also to answer a question from Sarah in the chat about, so if I may read the question. The question was, which tools may be more suited for fragile conflict-affected contexts? So what we would like, as we mentioned, is to have the ideal tool, but it's not the case yet. However, maybe my opinion is that we think that the urban NEET Plus could be the most suitable, but needs to be improved. And that is why also we are putting a lot of efforts within the NEET Plus steering committee to make this tool to at least have the resources to improve the tool, because there is a lot of possibilities of potentiality of improvements on this tool, and for me, as far as I know the different tools, this is the one that is more suitable for fragile conflict affected context, to answer the question in the chats. And this is the one that could gather most of our humanitarian sectors of interventions, and it's very user-friendly. But still, it has to be improved with the bugs we mentioned, but also with the content, because right now it's giving too many recommendations that are very general, and we need to have more accurate and specific mitigation measures that are recommended through this kind of tool. And that is why we have developed this matrix, because we really try to have concrete, straight to the point mitigation measures to propose. Over.
Thank you, Julian. Thank you for answering that question. I hope, Sarah, that answers your question. And then in the chat, there's also another question. Did you raise your hand again, Julie? Or is that a mistake? Okay. There's another question from Natalia. Does any of the tool presented or Mira, I think it sounds good, Mira, I like the name, consider the analysis and identification of the external risks, so reoccurring flood, drought that exist in the area, and the mitigation measures to them? I think that's a very good question. And again, to me, that's related also to the monitoring of how well you're doing with your mitigation measures. That's definitely something that we need to be integrating. I don't know, I haven't looked at the content of each section, so I don't know how well it is integrated, but that's definitely something, if it's not there, that we need to look at. I think there are some of those considerations in the NEET Plus results, but again, it might be very general, because I mean, at least in NEET Plus, it gives you recommendations based on the area in which you are. So depending on where you are, it might be more specific, but I cannot answer that 100%. In any case, that's definitely something that we need to be integrating. Julie?
Yeah, maybe to complete also the link with the climatic risks and that you mentioned, flood, drought, etc. That's something that is raised oftenly in our discussion, because when we talk about environmental risk mitigation measure, most of the time, those measures are also at the end are also contributing to climate change adaptation. I mean, for some measures, not all, but many mitigation measures are also looking at reducing climatic risks. So all this is linked, and sometimes we have also difficulties to let's say this is linked to the environmental risk, or this is linked to a climatic risk. So sometimes there might be some confusion, but this is obviously very linked and interrelated, all that. And it is, I mean, the climatic risks are really raised a lot in a lot of mitigation measures.
Thank you, Julie. And just putting on the steering committee of the Plus hat, I know that that's one of the priorities that want to be looked at in the further developing the tool. Is also to look at how we can integrate climate risks both in the questions and in the mitigation measures. So I don't know what shape it's going to take and how it's going to be integrated, but that's definitely something that's at the top of the list in terms of where to bring to make the tool go, basically. I think that's all the questions we had. If you have any more, we still have time. And if not, I can just move on to the next steps for the working group. Tina, thank you for that. Great. So when the mirror should be used, is it alongside one of the tools or it can be used instead of the tools? So and then again, if any of my colleagues want to complete, I think it's not instead of the tool, definitely not, because you don't have you really need to have a risk analysis before, so you need to know what the risks might be in your area. This is really more when doing your project design, when you already know where your activities are going to be, and then when you can still make some tweaks, but basically the main activities are there. But you definitely need to do an environmental assessment before. The way we see it as well is that you could do an environmental assessment at more a country office level, and then updated this on a regular basis or every time that there's an environmental change. And so once you have this risk analysis, then you can use also just the mitigation measures or to do. And then if you need more of analysis, you can also do the sectorial analyses that are in the NEET Plus. So it cannot be used as a standalone tool, I think. You really need to be aware of the risks that are specific to your area, and the NEET Plus and the EST do a good job at doing this as well. So I hope that answered your question. And with that, I'm just going to quickly present the next steps for the working group. So as you've seen, we're a bunch of different organizations. They're doing this also on their own time at their own organization. So we might not be the fastest group, but we try to go as fast as we can. So what we're working on to continue to test and providing the feedback to the tool owners on the different tools. As we said before, we're sitting on this NEET Plus steering committee, so that's also how we test the tools to be able to provide feedback and then to make to help make strategic decisions on how the tool should be developed. We want to finish the sectoral matrix and develop the missing sectors. So as I said, we've just putting up the MHPSS and health task force. I think some other sectors might be missing, such as protection. We really started out with the expertise that we had within the working group. But if you're an expert and you really want to work on something specific, reach out to us. We're very much open to having all kinds of experts and to have this as collaborative as we can. We want to just as we were saying about Tina's question, so propose the work done on the matrix as an interim alternative and to start the revision process of the other tools. So the way we've done it is because we looked at the existing content for all the tools related to each sector. We think that that was also one of the first steps to select what is relevant in the tools and what not be relevant anymore. And so we, as we're saying, providing feedback and bettering the other tools, and then disseminate the matrix throughout the sector and receive the feedback. So we really want this to be a living tool as much as we can. So to receive the feedback, update the Excel, and then also allow each person that uses the tool to just update it and use it as to their own needs. And before we let you go off to your own afternoons, with regards to the RH and the other working groups, so as I was saying, there are other sessions happening. Again, I realize now that you can't click on the links, I'm going to put them there. But if you're interested on other topics such as sustainable purchasing and waste management, we have upcoming sessions like these on Thursday. And this morning we had the one on carbon. And so you already have the recording and minutes that are available online, which I'm going to put the links right now. And so overall, if there's any question you have, the email address of the working group. We meet as often as we can and as often as needed. You can expect a first version. We hope you can expect the first version of the matrix before the summer, so at the end of June, beginning July. And you'll definitely hear from us more in a more communicative way at the autumn when we have a project that's going along. And how soon will the recording for this session be available? I'm going to try to put it online as soon as this is done, so before tonight, hopefully. Thank you so much to everyone. Thank you for your active participation as well. Thank you to the other working group members. If there's anything you want to add. And in that case, thank you so much.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.